Now to a remarkable story of transformation and the unlikely allies of an endangered butterfly. A recent UN report warns some 40% of pollinators, birds, bees, and butterflies, are at risk of extinction. Humans are the driving force behind the decline. Special correspondent Kat Wise reports on a unique effort in the U.S. that leads to more than flowers blossoming.
The artillery practice range at Joint Base Lewis McChord near Seattle, Washington, is not a place you'd expect to be ideal habitat for an endangered species, but it is. Meet the Taylor's checkerspot butterfly. 10 years ago, this beautiful insect was on the brink of extinction. 99% of its native prairie habitat in the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia has been lost to urban and agricultural development. The only location it could be found was here on the artillery range. Why? Well, it turns out that bombs actually benefit this butterfly.
If you're an individual butterfly that has a artillery shell land on you, it's bad. But if you zoom out from that small scale impact and look at the way that the training ignites fires across the landscape and improves the habitat across the landscape, overall it is likely good for the butterfly population.
Dan Grossball is an insect biologist at the base who has to be very, very careful when he's out looking for butterflies amid artillery shells.
They have a very brief adult lifespan, and the rest of the lifespan, the whole rest of the year, they're eggs or larvae.
Grossball and a team of other government scientists are now working to boost the numbers of butterflies here. But there's only so much they can do when this land is needed for other purposes.
The base is here in order to support troops training, so that troops are ready to go and fight. The fact that we also can provide habitat for endangered species is a really good thing, but it's important that all of the preservation of endangered species is not borne by the base.
So the military sought out help from an unlikely group who happened to have a lot of time on their hands.
I know.
On a recent morning, a small team of inmates at the Mission Creek Corrections Center for Women walked into a greenhouse known as the Butterfly Lab and quickly got to work.
5828 unmarked female.
Can I get a cover?
The greenhouse, which sits just outside the walls of the minimum security prison, was built 5 years ago with funding from the Department of Defense. Now these women, whose lives have all taken a wrong turn at some point, have become leading experts in the field of captive butterfly breeding.
5805. She's red dot.
She's marked?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Susan Christopher ended up here after making some bad decisions to support a gambling habit. Now, after going through some extensive training on butterfly rearing, she's fully engaged in a more productive and important endeavor.
We came up with this diagram so that we could keep our mature lines separate, and through our breeding program, the male from this line will get bred to females of this line. So when we continue to move through that circle so that we never breed the same line to itself.
And why is that important?
For genetic reasons. We want to have as much genetic diversity and not have the chance of interbreedings.
The women, who are called butterfly technicians, are raising the insects throughout their multiple life stages so they can be released back into the wild. It takes a lot of patience and a loving touch.
And that's honey solution on the Q-tip.
And they have been very successful. More than 30,000 Taylor's checker spots have been raised for release by this facility and the Oregon Zoo, which has a similar breeding program.
I've got 2 eggs for sure.
On the day we visited, Cynthia Federle and Jessica Stevens were working together on a very delicate project, harvesting the tiny eggs that a female Taylor's checker spot had recently laid.
The one I just got done finished doing was from the wild, and we weren't sure if we were going to be getting any eggs off them because they already looked like they'd been pretty spent. So getting that big cluster of eggs was really exciting. It's very rewarding, and it's hard to explain when you can actually help bring back an endangered species. It's very humbling to be able to do that.
The butterfly breeding program at Mission Creek is part of a larger effort in Washington State called the Sustainability in Prisons Project to connect inmates with science and nature while they are serving time. It's a joint endeavor by the Washington Department of Corrections and the Evergreen State College.
So we have programs all across the state.
Kelly Bush is the program manager for the project, and she says the benefits go beyond the prison walls.
It seems to be changing lives, not just the incarcerated individuals, but corrections staff and biologists, that everyone involved seems to be feeling good about the work and the contributions that are being made through these efforts.
Oh yeah, here they're on this side. When the larvae hatch, they'll actually just start feeding on those leaves that it's on.
One of those who is benefiting from the butterfly technicians' hard work is Mary Linders, a state biologist who has been spearheading efforts to increase the butterfly's habitat and numbers around Puget Sound. She says initially she wasn't sure how it would be to work with inmates.
It's very detail-oriented work. You really need a lot of consistency in the people that are actually working on it. So it was a risk, but it has proved to be a tremendous success. The folks at the prison have done just a fabulous job of running a top-notch facility.
Linders and a group of scientists and volunteers recently gathered to release captive raised caterpillars in a wildlife area near Olympia, Washington. And for the first time since the program began, they were joined by 2 inmates who had raised many of those insects.
Okay, where's the bugs at? We've got bugs in the car. You guys want to help get them out?
Yeah,
absolutely. There's your babies. Yeah!
After getting a tutorial from Linders about where and how to place the bugs,
what you're going to do is release these in groups of 2 to 5, but you can go ahead and even just brush them right off the lid.
Inmates Michelle Dittemore and Eva Ortiz began to release their fuzzy friends with mixed emotions.
I feel like it's a lot like your teenager flying the coop to go to college, and you're just like, I've literally bathed you, I've dressed you, I've done your laundry, I've packed your lunch. But I have to have faith that there's been so many generations of just instinct bred into these little guys that they're gonna get down there and they're just gonna know what to do.
Also helping out at the release, Carolina Landa. Landa was released from the correctional facility last year after serving time for a drug offense. But she's now enrolled in the Evergreen State College Environmental Science program. A big change in direction she attributes to her time spent with the butterflies.
Here is an endangered species, and that fact that they were saying, yes, we trust you, yes, we believe that you can do this work. And so that very much played a big factor in also me believing in myself, right, to start that path.
The combined efforts of all the various individuals and groups are paying off. At this release site, the butterfly population has doubled since last year to several thousand. And at Joint Base Lewis McChord, the population has just been deemed to be self-sustaining, a significant milestone for the species. Back at the prison greenhouse, Susan Christopher says she's learned some valuable lessons from the butterflies.
And when I watch the butterflies struggling to come out of their cocoon, out of their chrysalis, it really makes me realize that, we all do need to struggle to get to where we need to be.
Christopher and her colleagues are now gearing up for a busy summer, caring for some very hungry caterpillars. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Kat Wise in Washington State.